significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early. About is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rally. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns, Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live. Shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up...
You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television used for food, so maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
But
television.
the people on
I'm taking it from
television
the city
saying the
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formally, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney. I want to really know the inside track on who the former president is. If he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump will give you
See, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper, he was no good, I fired him, so he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me they can write books, with nobody else can they? But look at the economy, look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists, they have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history. No problem using the U.S. military. You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah. It is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country, and they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is criminals off the street, and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it. Because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraud, a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country.
Well, excuse me, the FBI reported they were defrauding statements. Didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is on this same old tired, address what we need to do about the housing businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA of New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand that this is the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military under guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for solar weapons. Now your campaign
the same person, and then
I know
Biden
you say that
signed.
your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of it, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history. We rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increased by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work, the long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed, and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name-calling. The strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well, first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father. I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even against it for 12 years. Defund the police. She's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. She went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out, that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis. She went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day 1. Just to finish one thing, so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. The prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert soil.
President Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that?
And patriotically, I said during my speech, not patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what...
Asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally, or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. They did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about...
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital. 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear, on that point, Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election,
technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you do a special on it, I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you, we have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. A nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by whiskers. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that has come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps, or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just tell you about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Pipeline. And Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must billions. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert, women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that, in Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran, and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up. Far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority. Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Spheres of terror, and they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. War with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of upholding and respecting and...
She's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins, and I think he meant it. Because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way, gets paid a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National.
Financial Division will continue after this.
Welcome back.
Talk about what we heard in that election. So, first things first. Let's start. Should we start with the economy?
Let's start.
We think Kamala Harris will come through for the middle class in America.
I feel like we would like to hope that both candidates will come through on the thing that they're promising to the citizens. There have been many accounts where so it would be disappointing if these things do not happen, but I would be looking forward to. Kamala has some very good points that she's made, and I would really hope that these are things that she actually plans on doing.
Mr. Isaac?
Well, I really wanted to talk about that question that didn't get answered when David Muir asked Trump about the bill that Kamala Harris mentioned that was added 1,500 agents. But being fair on both sides, you know, her and Biden has been in office for 4 years. Why, if that was possible, why didn't they try to push that effort? These are some things that, you know, independents, you know, that I neither Republican or Democrat, or maybe some of them, you know, would have come across their minds with the question. Now, Trump dodged it. He said, well, let me say this here first. But he never did get back to answering that question. And then I fault the interviewers for not even
Trying to bring it
staying
back to
focused and bringing it back to them and having both sides answer that question.
Yeah.
So these are some serious missteps that happened.
Yeah, like anytime there was a question asked towards Trump, he would rebuttal it with one of his statements or an opinion of his, and not answer the question because what he said would be so long, you would disregard the question. Like you would forget what you asked.
Yeah, he was deflecting. That's what he was doing. He was deflecting all the questions and just saying other things to take the focus off what he was asked because he probably didn't have such a good response. So I noticed that in a lot of the questions that he was asked.
Yeah, and I did some fact checking on some of the things that was said, and the thing about Tim Walz, you know, he never did say that.
It doesn't support abortion until the moment of court.
Right.
Yeah.
So I did fact check. So that's one thing too that you can do, fact checking. I think they're too focused on bashing one another, I think, instead of
uplifting their own campaigns and what they want to do.
That's regarding to my first point. The politics really don't care about any back and forth. Y'all are bickering about nothing. Instead of bickering, solve the problem 9 times out of 10 together.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, the positive side. And of course, you know, you got an elephant in the room. You want to mention some of that, but you know, you want to be more positive and focus on your good points than the other person's bad point, but also not just ignore it.
The next question would be, would the American people believe in someone who's recently convicted of tax fraud coming towards the economy?
I feel like anybody cool, and I'm not being biased here, but Trump has been accused of many felonies, 34 to be exact, and he actually does have court in November. And it's just a thought of, is this who you want to be leading our nation? Someone who has been committing crimes against our nation. And if you can look to someone who is a criminal, just not in jail, like, where are your morals? Like, what do you believe in if you think it's okay to allow a felon to have a seat in the White House? So that's just my opinion on it.
Well, I think that the United States is a place of second chances and fresh starts. But with tax fraud, who is 100% free of tax fraud? But that's another issue.
I don't mean to cut you off, Mr. Isaac, but I've got word the debate is back on, so we
Okay.
should tune in back to that.
Okay.
They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars. Well, maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president. For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin. Hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is, if I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other. When I saw Putin, but after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. Must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it, and now you have millions of people dead, and it's only that we don't even know if he's. Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
They
here,
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided. Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and I'll...
In Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow, quiet please, he would have been sitting in Moscow much happier than he is right now. But eventually talk about that, got nuclear weapons, nobody ever thinks about that, and eventually maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. She did. and the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate as soon as they left. Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is, it has been about standing as America always should. As a leader, upholding international understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The press have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I wanted to move on to...
He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO, he said, I've never seen, for years we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European. It was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. States military, who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker, even his national security advisor. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. Well, he's the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left with a brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, 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 this. was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move
And
on.
these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known.
You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I don't
asking.
know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread the United States. And I think the American people want better than that. Want better than stands as I do. I travel our country. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, well, a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park fight. They admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50s in the history, bigger, better, and stronger. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation I believe, David, that people really want tonight. and name calling.
President Trump, we have to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She
Mute
has
his
a
mic.
plan to
Mute his
confiscate
mic.
everybody's gun.
President
She
Trump,
has
you
a
have
plan.
Why did he turn his mic
to
off?
Because her miss.
Policy that he wouldn't stop talking. That's why they put a turn on his mic.
Something twice that I need to respond to.
I'm sorry, we're gonna move on.
And now she won't shut up.
President Trump, this is now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to better. Last month you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care. Up with something, and we are working on things. We're going to do it, and we're going to replace it. But remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? Decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But
Saying the
it's
same thing
still
over and over
never
in
going to
different
be great.
format.
What we'll do is we're looking at different plans. Our population, less money, and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not
Do
president
you have
right
a
now.
plan?
But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not-too-distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option.
4 years as vice president, private healthcare options, but what we need to do is maintain and grow the affordable that former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking, and then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both with this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time. When I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate, and the late great as being you don't like him, you said at the time, because you'll never forget that night. Walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. The ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years, drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it,
Vice
pass it
President
pro up
Harris,
in
thank
terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on
I
that.
want to move to an issue that's important for a
She
lot
made a
of...
mistake. And number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better. Move private insurance for people, private medical insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6
Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as Vice President over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas, over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs in clean energy, to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Good night.
Alright, so as you can see, we still have a battle between President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. And if you've been watching the debate the whole time, you can see that whenever Vice President Harris has a debate or has something to say, and the interviewer asks the next question, Donald Trump goes into a rebuttal, or he would interrupt the interviewer from asking a question just to get his point across for the Republicans. So.
And it's just a mature way of going at his points and his denouncing Kamala Harris and Joe Biden Harris, and not Joe Biden, but he's continuously finding these things to pick at out of the way Joe Biden ran the country and the way Kamala Harris led the country. And he's just picking at these little things that have nothing to really do with the topic at hand. And so it's just wondering when he's going to step up and actually talk about what needs to be talked about. And not just him years ago or while he was in the House. And so I just feel like they both need to step up and talk about what's actually at hand and the questions that are being asked instead of denouncing each other and what they have done in the past.
What do you think about what have you seen in the second part of the election? What are your thoughts, Mr. Isaac?
More of the emotional driven bashing of each other. Now Kamala Harris is and Donald Trump is saying some things that you have to just go and see about fact checking a lot of the things that I think the political scene is a lot different than it was 40 or 50 years more integrity and things. I guess the Nixon and Kennedy debates, but you know, politics was had a lot more integrity than it has now. And I'm wanting to see the page turn and where the standards are raised on all the issues, because some of the things that is being said, you know, by Trump, it is crumbling. But why is it crumbling? And it's not of certain presidents that do it. It's all of us have a responsibility on that of why it's crumbling. But we rely on the political head to improve itself.
And I would just like to make these things that are being said by Donald Trump. There have actually been 4 things that I've taken down that Donald Trump, one of which being the immigrants are eating people's pets. So, I don't know where he got that from, but that was a kicker for me. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah,
so,
he's the president.
You should just look him up for yourself, and the internet can provide you many resources on these things, and that's really all I can say.
Yes, and I would say also check your sources for credibility. That's the thing about media literacy and journalism.
All right, I don't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Isaac, but the DNC or the presidential.
One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe it's us, and we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a now vice president. I've only had one client asked a Democrat. The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want. Things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine, we're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
So that concludes the presidential debate of 2024. Do you guys have any remarks you'd like to make about this?
Yeah, I think the debate is still going to leave the American people still hungry for more information and be educated on how each of the candidates plan for them. It's what's in it for me. I do notice the personalities and the behavior. He tries to work on emotion, and you have to look it up. I wonder what kind of strategy book is he reading out of. You know, some of the things are true, but just how you say it is telling about who you are too.
It's all about the delivery.
Yeah, the delivery of it. You know, things are crumbling. We know here, even in Chicago, crime is out of control. You know, even though they've done some of the statistics, it's improved a little bit, but it's still, you know, way out of control. You know, grandmothers getting killed just recently over the news. But I think that's probably something more than just politics. I'm still got to review some of this stuff, and I don't know. What do you think?
Well, first off, I would like to introduce another cast member, Mr. Patterson. Please join us at the table.
Hello, everyone.
So, Mr. Patterson, I would like to get your input on this presidential debate. What do you think was the most important part, and what do you think was, like, the least important part of the debate on both sides?
Both sides. Okay,
Yes, sir.
for the debate so far, I didn't. I think the debate was nice. Let's get there. The debate was nice. I have seen that, like, a lot of people say that they're watching the debate. Trump isn't asking questions. Trump wasn't really answering any questions. He was giving up and down answers going both ways with every question that was getting answered. With Kamala, she was giving the right answers, but I still feel like it's up and down. More of everyone still doing research, them still preparing on how to debate. Cause one, she is kind of new to debating. This her. I think immigration and border is two different things to worry about. Like, immigration is one thing that we need to worry about, and then two, securing the border. Like, what is the steps to secure a border of the United States? And then that I would like them to talk about further on.
Do you think it was more of a back and forth between President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris? Or do you think were they answering the questions that were given?
I think I'll say a little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
A little bit of
What do you
both.
think?
I feel like it was definitely, I agree it was a little bit of both. At some points they were giving good points and answering the questions, But a lot of times what I did see was more of them bumping heads and disagreeing with each other, pointing fingers at each other about what one person did or what one person did not do. So I feel like it has to be a certain level of maturity to where you're not attacking each other but attacking the problems. So.
Mr. Isaac, what do you think about that? Or do you agree?
I think each one of them appeal to their base. And they're both, the strategy is try to win the undecided vote. Trump's strategy is to feed into people's fears and to their emotions. You know, you're talking about they're saying things like they're the worst president and the worst vice president in the history of you know, feeding them thoughts into people's minds. And so that was one, he was appealing to his base. She was trying to appeal to her base and also appeal to undecideds by telling them that she's going to be a president for all people. And she did mention some plans about some of the things that she's going to do. That one about, you know, tax breaks that she's going to give businesses, giving them some tax breaks to start new businesses. Those types of things in the plan. I'm trying to delve into those rehearsed and
unrehearsed debate.
No, not the debate, but sound points. The thing is not to make mistakes, and when you're doing those debates, they are rehearsed.
Yeah.
They practice with them.
They did talk about how Kamala practiced for the debates, and Trump was saying that he don't need to practice for debates, which I think you should practice for debates because you never know what may happen.
Yeah, because in the debate he was saying the same thing over and over and over, just in a different format. You know,
exactly.
I wasn't sure if I was the only one that picked that up, but it was like, are you listening to yourself talk because you're saying the same thing over and over?
It sounded like it was consistent. Joe Biden and Kamala didn't do this, or Kamala does not like this group of people, or Kamala supports this, and it's like he was basically just agreeing with what Jaden said. He was saying the same things over and over, and I think that just pinpoints that he did not practice because he didn't think he needed to practice, but it's very evident that he should have.
Yeah, because he did talk about how Kamala had and Biden had 3.5 years to close the border, but I think it's not just about closing the border. How can we? Well, it is about closing the border. Let's not say
and
that.
if you look at it, he was president for 4 years. He
And
could have closed the border.
Because Texas sheriffs and Border Patrol have talked about how no matter of us putting up the Texas border wall or not, people still can climb the wall. No matter how high it is, you can easily put something up there to climb right across. And then they also talked about how Trump messed with like national security and things like that.
Going back to what you said about the 3 years, when Trump said Kamala was in office for 3.5 years, she could have done what she could have done between those 3 years. Do you think it's because she couldn't do it because of what he left President Biden and Vice President Kamala, or was it because she's getting stuff in plan and able to make it better?
Well, I would say this. Just to make sure everyone understands, because I think this is where we're at in the world where everyone thinks that the president has full authority to do what he or she wants, which that is never the case. You have to go through legislative, then you have to go through the president. Just thinks the president has full authority to do what he or she wants, and that's not the case. That's just like with stimulus checks. When stimulus checks came out, that's the exact reason why a lot of minorities think Donald Trump is best to be president again, or that's why they keep saying that they're voting for him again, because he gave them stimulus checks. His name was just on the stimulus checks.
Right.
But Congress, which during that time, Congress was
which is the House
Democrats,
of Representatives.
and I think the House and Senate was Democrats also during that time.
Well, the appropriation of money comes from the
Congress.
Congress.
So I would say I would like people to better understand how do politics work. What is the process of change of command? Because we're just thinking the president have full authority. That's not the case.
Question, and I think I kind of asked it before. What do young people think about this kind of debate? What do you think?
Big play on social media. So I would say, based off what everyone has seen today, as soon as it hits social media, whatever social media says, that's what.
I would say I've been looking at chats and different things all day about the debate, watching videos and people talking about Trump. He did this for us. He did this for us. But Trump didn't do those things. Congress did those things. The House and Senate did those things. And then people are saying that Kamala isn't doing anything. I feel like we need to understand that Kamala is in office now. And while she's vice president, or while she's been vice president for these 3.5 years, she's been in the House of Senate and the House of Congress with Republicans. Mm-hmm. So what can get passed with 2 Democrats and a Republican legislative? Nothing can really get passed that way.
Exactly. Yeah. And just again talking about how the youth feel. I'm gonna say what more the youth should do. I said this before. Get off of social media and build your own opinions on these people. Mm-hmm. You cannot build an opinion on someone based off what you see other people say on social media. You cannot have I can't base my opinion off of Jaden's opinion, Isaac's opinion, Martavian's opinion. My opinion has to be my own opinion, otherwise it's not true. And it's just not, it's not my opinion, it's someone else's. And so I can't say, oh yeah, I'm voting for Kamala, and then somebody asks, because Jaden did. So I just feel like you should always go and build your own opinion, do your own research, and your own fact checking.
Piggybacking off of Sienna, just because say you vote for someone and that's not who everyone else is voted for, like it makes you the odd person. That's okay to be the odd person. That's what you believe in. You shouldn't have to just follow everyone's crowd or just follow, like, don't let them.
You brought up the issue about race and how Donald Trump made that front page. I mean that full page ad about the Central.
Wrong side.
And he tried to minimize it. He minimized it by saying it was.
I can't say what I want to say about Trump, but Trump is Trump. You know the family that he was raised in. So,
and another thing that needs to be fact checked is about him not wanting to rent to
African, or ask you all, who do you guys think from this debate? Who would you vote for?
When I vote for the debate, I would not be voting for Donald Trump.
What are some key points that is pushing you more to Kamala's side from watching the debate just for today?
Just that she's a more well-rounded person. She talked more about what she wanted to do for the people, opposed to whereas Trump was talking about what the opposing side did not do for the people. She talked about women's rights. She talked about and it's just more of she had a better instead of hindering us, as where Donald Trump really talked about how we've been hindered and what he did when he was the president and not what he will do if he becomes the president. And
I agree. I feel like Donald Trump is very immature towards his decision making, and that whenever Kamala Harris made a great point or a point that she wanted to make a promise towards the American people, he would rebuttal with, well, they didn't do this and they couldn't have done that. She's been in office for 3.5 years. She still hasn't done this. Well, if you look at your presidency, what have you done for the American people?
And compare both presidencies together.
Yes. Every promise that you've made, have you made every promise? Because as her being vice president for 3.5 years, you know, it's like we really have to compare what you've done and what she's done.
Yeah, and I would like to say debates or come down to picking a president. We go off so much off, well, like you said, we go off social media, and Trump is more of people focus on, I'm trying to make sure I say the right thing and not say the wrong thing. So give me a minute, let's come back. But I'll make sure I say the right thing, because I don't want to say anything that's like too much Kamala and too much Trump. So, you want to answer the question from the debate? Who
You want to be objective about the issue?
I don't want to be too.
Well, I and that's how I'm looking at it, to be objective. And like I said before, they're both appealing to their campaign strategies, appealing to their base, but also trying to influence the undecideds to come on their side. Trump has the popular, but you also have to, remember that we were coming out of a
Pandemic.
and we were in a pandemic, and so that caused the United States that was able to work when there was a shutdown. Nobody could go anywhere.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, most people look at the immediacy of, what they got, that they could touch it and feel it. We're in a tough situation now because of inflation has gone up. Even though we have some other things in the economy that are doing good. The stock market is at the high points it has ever reached. But who does that benefit the most? And now we're suffering now because you go to a restaurant.
You got a million things on the receipt. Because at first, before the pandemic, we didn't have gratuity and things like that on the receipt. Now it's like mandatory for it to be on there, and then it's like, depending on which restaurant you go to, it can range from like 5% to like 20% or 25%, depending on the restaurant. It's like a meal that used to cost like $10 is like $25 now at a restaurant.
So these some issues that just really need to be focused on, by all of our political leadership that that have some influence to make those changes. Somebody's got to be creative in the way they think to change the situation. And gas prices was through the roof, and you'd have people in lines around the block to get gas. Jimmy Carter years when that happened. So there was some other things that were going on. But we've been in this situation before us to lead us out of it.
So Donald Trump did say during the debate, if I remember, that he did grace and have a Roe versus Wade overturned. What is your turn on Roe versus Wade? Do you think it's good that he overturned it?
I don't have a really big personal stance on abortion. I do feel like women should have the right to choose what happens with their own bodies. Because there are very unfortunate situations where the baby will not make it, or maybe the mother will not make it to term, or there's a chance where there's rape or incest, or there could be any kind of situation that happens where abortion would be the best option for everybody involved. And of course there should be cutoff. You should not be able to get an abortion at certain amounts of time in the pregnancy, because there comes a point where that actually is a human being.
And it's already formed and things like that.
Yeah. So I do believe that for a certain time period, abortion should be able to happen, because it does become a safety issue with all parties involved. So yeah, but I feel like Roe v. Wade should not have been overturned, because it was beneficial to the women of the people of the United States.
Yes, I agree with Tiana, because say for instance, for example, if there was a sexual assault or a rape that would happen, and say the woman gets pregnant by the accuser, she wouldn't want to, I would hope not, she would not want to carry the baby of a rapist.
Okay.
So for her to get the abortion, that would not only release stress off her, but literally like she would no longer have a child that she did not want, And with Donald Trump, with him stating that he wanted to have IVF treatments paid for by the government, IVFs, but overturn Roe v. Wade, like that really isn't adding up.
That was a thing where, well, I was thinking about like how, if you look at families now, without Roe versus Wade turn, like you have families where the mother is raising 1 to 6 kids maybe on her own, and there's no father. You have times where accidents happen. You have times where rape cases happen, and especially with like rape cases, you don't want someone to get sexual rape or anything, and then they're stuck with their rapist baby. Like
Exactly.
that would be something that's gonna traumatize someone for like the rest of their life.
Not only are you gonna lose the baby, but on the woman there could be depression later on.
Yeah.
She herself but damaged the baby, and I believe that he overseen that and like didn't pay.
It comes to a point where it's like some people get abortions like you go to the grocery store and pick up milk, and it's like the recreational sex, like we all know, people enjoy having sex. So like it has why we have other contraceptives. There's female condoms, there's male condoms, and so I feel like we should be using these things so we don't have to keep getting abortions, because at some point it does start to harm the female body, and at some point maybe you actually will want children, and then you'll look back and you'll regret what you've done. And I just have, there's like there's a push and pull on the situation for me.
Okay. And he keep questioning her race.
I feel like that's something that shouldn't even be a question, because you're a Republican, she's a Democrat. That's the only important thing right now.
And who has the better policies? Who's going to talk about policies? Who's going to talk about things that are really happening and not things that are just getting falsely
Race
made up?
has no input or no. It really shouldn't matter in this race at all.
Yeah. So Kamala did say during Trump rallies and everything that he brings up fictional characters.
Oh yes.
And things
Hannibal
like I never watched one of his rallies, but I think next time we should like compare a Trump rally and a Kamala. If I say her name right.
Reported by that, she did say that she's seen people walking out of Trump rallies because they were boring, or walking out of his debates because they were boring.
Yeah, so I would like, so to say that, like, that would be like a fact check that we would like have to fact check, like, if she's sending people to Trump rallies to like see
that's happening.
and what is.
Trump was saying if she's
Why?
honestly,
I was at the Democratic National Convention. You should have
of course.
seen how many people was
yes,
at
there
the
are a
Democratic
lot
National
of people
Convention.
there. I don't think she paid.
Yeah, I don't think she paid.
Everyone who was there had 100% support.
And she have 100% support from her sorority.
Exactly.
So if you divide nine, which she has, you got support from black women. You got support from black men. You got support from HBCUs. White men had a Zoom call for Kamala. White women had a Zoom call for Vice President Harris. Republicans had numbers and things that she need to win the election. I think her main focus is how can she get the younger votes more than the older votes. Even though she needs both to win the election, I think she want to focus more on getting younger people to vote and register to vote to grab a lot of younger people, because a lot Gen Z, millenniums voting for her, and like, and I hear a lot of people talk about, a lot of younger people like around my age, probably a little older, talk about how Vice President Harris is the candidate that they want. But then you may get a little that talk about how former President Trump is a candidate they want. And when you compare the two, it's like, do you want a prosecutor in office, or do you want a felony with 2 impeachments in office?
34 counts.
And then they also push Donald Trump. I think his verdict back. Where
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They pushed it back
To November,
until after the election.
Yes.
So after January 6th, I think.
Yeah.
Where like, if this was a black president that had 2 impeachments and 34 felonies, where would we stand? They would not be in that same predicament.
So not only is it just race behind the presidents, but it's also behind the president's seat, the Congress, the court systems. It's more than just what people on TV are seeing.
Yeah.
Like they're just seeing, oh, okay, he just got pushed back. His verdict just got pushed back to January 6th. It's more to that, and people don't want to dive into it. They just want to see what. Oh, okay, that's what that says. That's what I'm gonna believe.
Yeah.
They're not gonna dive deeper into it.
If me being a judge and whoever the judge is for that particular case, I feel like that judge should have been like, this is the case. And if this was you was a regular person at the time, I would have did sent you to jail or not sent you to jail during this amount of time. knowing it's Trump, you pushing it back to see what will happen. And once he get in office and you say that he has to go to jail for 3 years, now he won't be able to go to jail because he's the president of the United States, and they're with Project 2025 and different things like that. They're working on full immunity for a president, which I think full immunity for a president is uncalled for. The law is the law. The president is still, he will have to follow the laws of the United States.
And nobody is above the law.
No one is above the law.
I just did some research that Trump said. He said when they're talking about the board, he said when you look at what she's done in our country, when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, whereas I believe 21 million people, not the 15 that people, and they came, CPB has recorded over 8 million encounters with migrants at the southern border since Biden took office in 2021. That's what federal figures show. Encounters include migrants who cross in the country illegally between legal entry points and those produced through these official crossings. But I think they came up with the highest monthly migrant encounter tally was recorded in December of 2023, and that was when it was 300,000. Then, Biden greatly, I'm trying to see. So, a little exaggeration there, and you twist the words, but when people don't take the time to do fact checking, they just pass on what they hear, and a lot of times through social media and word of mouth, that's how people get their news and information. So that was one thing. When did they do any fact checking? First claims Trump would enact $4,000 sales tax. Economists have said that Trump's sales tax would actually result for middle class in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies. This was Harris saying his ideas about what should be on the backs of middle class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires. Harris is citing an estimate of potential costs if Trump were to implement tariffs on imported goods. Trump has advocated for a tariff of at least 10% on most imports and a tariff of at least 60% on Chinese imports. However, estimates of the potential costs and the likely scale of the tariffs vary, and analysis from the Center for American Progress Action, a progressive policy institute, estimated a 20% tariff on most imports combined with the 60% tax on Chinese goods would amount to a tax increase of about $3,900 annually for middle income families. So a lot of times, those figures and things get lost in the minds of, normal people, and they just want to know, am I going to have more money or less money from this activity? That's what people want to know.
Yeah. Kamala also talked about how 81 million people fired Donald Trump for ever being president again, but I think this is like a 2-point race. I have been hearing that, I forgot the man's name, but he predicted the election for the last 7 to 8 years. They talked about how person one, he predicted this time that Vice President Harris would win the presidency, so I would say that November 5th will be like the day that we know who will win his presidency.
Yeah, and what Trump said,
Richmond
said that, that they had the highest inflation about during the 70s and 80s, inflation reached up to 12% and 4%, but right now, 1.1%. So, equity and what politicians say, and instead of just trying to, that politicians and stuff do, and I come up with it.
I would like to say another thing that I was taking notes on was Donald Trump claimed that Biden and Harris is letting illegal immigrants inside of the United States, and they are stealing like that and so forth. So it would be like, let's fact check these things. So I know Ohio mayor talked about one Ohio mayor, because of course many cities talked about how what J.D. Vance said was not true.
Yeah.
That people aren't eating pets, people aren't stealing inside of their city. I would say that Trump needs to get facts before he starts claiming what immigrants are doing.
Yes.
Instead of just trying to send immigrants back, as his plan will be.
Another fact check here says that Haitian migrants eating pets in Ohio, Trump says, which is a claim, and the fact check saying it was false.
It is false. That's the exact one that I was just talking about, that even J.D. Vance said it at a rally, and it was like, that's not true.
So your own is false, yet you're still trying to
No.
persuade.
J.D.
Oh,
Vance said it
that
first,
they were eating
and now
pets.
Trump is saying it
Oh wow.
at the debate.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So you both are delusional.
Both.
Wow.
You know, propaganda is that word that I'm going to use. It's information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. And there's a lot of political propaganda being put out here, you know, and I can say that's even by both sides.
Yeah. Even with like Trump saying that he's not involved in Project 2025, but if you watch some of the videos, even though I can say with the ads and everything that's going out for the presidential election, we can't go off each ad.
Right.
Because people do make false things inside of their ads to make it seem like it's true.
Yes.
But I would say we need to focus, and is he going to push it when he get in office if he wins this election?
Yeah, because in his election he said that there were some good points and there were some bad points. So
Yeah,
if there are
even
good
the
points-
writer, the author of Project 2025 said that Trump has been at meetings during the meetings of the time that they was writing Project 2025. They also talked about how Trump is supportive of Project 2025. So, Trump, you're saying one thing, then the author and the creator is Elon Musk donating money to the Trump campaign. I would say it's a 50-50. Well, he the one did give Trump back his Twitter account
Yes.
after it got taken away. So that can explain a lot. Elon Musk did visit the White House when Trump was in election. If I'm not mistaken, there was pictures and things. It would be like if Elon Musk is giving money to the Trump election, how would that help Elon in the future when Kamala wins? Or like, what would be his tweets and his posts, or what would it be like for Trump and Elon if she won? Or Tesla, like will Tesla stocks drop or would they keep rising?
I'm going to focus on this propaganda thing. I just got through looking up to it. It talked about in 1939, social scientists Alfred and Elizabeth Lee first classified propaganda as a collection of 7 commonly used techniques in their book, The Fine Art of Propaganda. Those 7 techniques were defined as name calling, glittering generalities, transfer, testimonial, plain folk, card stacking, and bandwagon. And, you know, it says propaganda is a set of strategies designed for persuasion. And so, and I know Trump is a master at it. And so
I'm master of all.
so I can't, and then I can't say Kamala has not used propaganda.
Right.
You know, and they're focusing on the Project 2025, which may have, he's separated himself, so he says that he's not, but some of his ideas fit with what
Project
they,
2025.
1 second ago, which I think is big because Swifties have been waiting on who will be the next president for Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift officially nominated Kamala Harris to be the next president of the United States. So I think this is a big moment because, like, 2019 when she talked about the presidential election, and before in the past when she talked about the presidential election, it was like she didn't know whose side to be on during that particular time, and then people was saying things about her during that particular time. Her sitting on a couch speaking about the presidential election and speaking how people may hate her for who she picked or people may not hate her for who she picked.
And then it gives a breakdown of all those 7 techniques. It says name calling. The name calling technique is very literal. It uses insults to call out the perceived deficits of the competition or the opposing side. This name calling can resort to the use of stereotypes and slurs. And glittering generalities, which will educate me also, is glittering generalities sound better than they. This technique is especially used in political campaigns when politicians are described as refreshing or decent. Descriptors that are complimentary, subjective, and ultimately meaningless. The transfer technique, the technique of transfer involves person, product, or caused by association. You know Trump used that when he said this is the worst presidency in the history. And she's the worst vice president in the history of vice presidents.
Yep.
For example, a business owner could seem more trustworthy or respectable because they stand in front of an American flag in their commercial. Or you do the negative by saying some negative things. The testimonials are the endorsement by a celebrity or general respected person for a product. So TJ just mentioned Taylor Swift endorsing
Kamala
Harris.
Vice President Harris, let's say. Vice President Harris.
This technique is commonly used as a persuasive device in advertising. This is with politics we're talking about. Say I'm looking to find a high quality toothpaste at 4 out of 5 dentists recommend a specific brand. You would be more likely to spend money on that brand because someone who ostensibly knows more than you about the product that tells you to use it. Playing folk. The techniques of playing folk takes the concept of real people and uses it as an inspirational tool. So it seeks to convince an audience that a certain product is perfect for the average person, that a politician is a regular Joe just like them. Playing folks makes lowest common denominator or a compliment rather than an insult. And I'm saying this because this is done and used, these strategies used by both sides. You know, president who's more like playing folk.
Yeah, Governor Walz. Governor Walz is, I feel like, that was the best with Governor Walz. He's a father man. He's in a family of generations of teachers, social workers. He's a coach. Stands with decisions and different things like that.
Well, you could say the same thing about Trump's vice president.
Who?
Who's his vice president?
J.D. Vance, give us some information.
I mean, you could say, depending on the former vet, he's an author. He's been in plenty of movies. As a Democrat, you can say the same thing, but a Republican might say different. I say otherwise, just because of all the facts that they believe in. You know, I'm trying to even out the playing field.
Yeah.
But did you see at the beginning of the election where Kamala Harris, you got President Trump on this side, Kamala Harris on this side. You see how Vice President Harris walked towards his podium and shook his hand. He shook his hand and he stood like he didn't meet her in the middle or anything. He stood at his podium. That shows a lot. Like that shows a lot of.
To me, that was a big boss move. It was a political move.
Yes.
It was
to show you that yes, I'm your president. This is how I'm going to address the situation, and this is my.
I'm gonna be a president for all the people.
Yeah, I think that walking up to the podium, to his podium, showed authority. Like,
not only that, but it showed respect towards him as well.
I've seen other political debates where they walked in front of the podiums and they met halfway, and then they go back to he walked behind his podium.
Yeah. So he went straight to his podium.
And then that was another thing where I thought
that he got learned how to. There's plenty of people have told me this. It's not about what you say, it's always how you say it. It's the delivery of what you want to say. Like, you get your point across.
It's a very condescending tone with a lot of the things he was
like
saying.
I said in the beginning,
he got a power
towards me, but I do feel as if Kamala did A+ this debate. Like, she showed everything that she needed to show for some people. Some people still want. I heard just being a female that's running and that's already a Democrat male that was running. I think that will be where we'll be at in the next about
Yeah.
to the election.
Yeah, I think Trump, he did better than he has in some other debates, but he still showed his character for
I
it.
think that was because the rules that ABC made for this specific debate. I think if it wasn't no set rules that got sent out to the campaign managers for the debate, it would have been a debate that would have been all over the place. Kamala would have been having to tell, hey, Mr. President, I'm speaking. It would have been a be quiet, shut up from Trump. It would have been a lot of back and forth on stage, more
Controversy.
answering questions and getting straight to the point of what the question is. Or
And he was listening intently, you know.
yeah, I think he was grabbing some of her points to say some
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. I'm
But
gonna
he
go to
wasn't
this.
interrupting her.
We're going to see in the next few weeks or a few days at a Trump rally where he repeats something from a Kamala being on stage. And we know he did it before.
Now I'm going to this next propaganda strategy. It says card stacking. Card stacking is a way of listing all the features or aspects of a product, person, or cause that stresses the positive qualities while downplaying the negative or questionable qualities. The intention is to give the audience only a small part of the picture. And that can be reversed too. You can give all the negative things. And they kind of talked about that, you know, him having all those felonies and the cases, and but he said, well, I beat most of them, and then I'm gonna beat the rest of them in appeal.
Yeah, would America really trust someone who's been convicted of tax fraud with their economy?
Well, he's already been president, and he was 20 before.
Obviously, some people do. There are a lot of people who believe in Donald Trump who believe that's the best candidate where their morals are. If you're willing to put
Is one of the best debates America have ever seen as a prosecutor in a felony running for president. And it's like, this is a
Well,
one
you
in a
would say
lifetime
a
thing.
person convicted of a felony.
A person convicted
Of
of
a felony.
Well, that concludes today's.
Well, no, I want to finish this last thing on propaganda, because educating our audience is good. Into politics, and we need politics to be more honest and
Get to a point
The-
where every
the bandwagon
Can
technique
be.
encourages people to join up with others or take part in something because everyone else is doing it without critically thinking about why they would involve themselves. It additionally plays on our fear of missing out on something others are enjoying. You know, it talks about the key elements. I would encourage people to start looking at these types, because these are the psychological things that people use with media. There's safety amongst many counselors, so we need to listen to a lot of sources and then try to find out the credibility of these sources. So that's what my take.
Well, that concludes today's debate. Once again, I'm your host Jaden, here with,
Sienna.
Martavian.
Isaac Lewis.
and you can catch us on November 5th. I believe that's the.
November 5th.
You can catch us on November.
There might
5th.
be another debate before then.
No, I believe today. It was today and then debate.
Well, we never know. They may agree to it.
With each other
Not
again.
again.
Well,
But-
we're going to see what happens with the results.
Once we, after today, well, let's say by Friday we can like look at the numbers in the polls of who's winning and who's dropped tremendously.
Because right now
I
it looks
think-
like Kamala's in the lead.
Yeah, Kamala is in the lead by 2 points.
Mm-hmm.
So I think by Friday it will be like the 6-point rally, where it usually is for like a presidential debate. It usually like 6 point here, 6 point there.
Yep.
So I think by Friday will give us that mark that we're looking for to say who will be the next president. Because November 5th, 11:59 or 7 o'clock. Well, 7 o'clock between 11:59 really debates who's the next president of the United States. I would like to also point out the next couple videos that will be getting released from YVP Media and other streams will be media about politics. How do politics work? The history of Kamala, the history of Donald Trump. Also talk about the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and the executive branch and how those things work. Them is the next move in the next videos from YVP Media. Thank you for watching YVP Media. I'm TJ.
I'm Sienna.
I'm Jaden.
I'm Isaac Lewis.
See you guys November 5th or next time when we